So thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to another edition of the Birth New Earth podcast. I am your host, Alana Light. It is our mission to be able to awaken and empower and unite all of humanity to be able to live with much more abundance, much more joy, much more peace, so that we can all get together, we can roll up our sleeves and co-create the kind of earth that we all really deserve to live on together. And my guest, Mo Ezderman, is doing exactly that. He is using AI to do that, and I can't wait to hear all about that. So he has this finger on the pulse of the latest AI innovations. He is leading AI transformation for global companies, right? And I really want to hear about all the emerging tech, and you're joining us to really talk about a couple topics that I think are hitting close to home for like everyone, right? Like we've heard now the big four, I think Accenture last week just made an announcement as well that they're essentially streamlining all of HR to coexist with AI so that they're going to in some way eliminate the need for like all entry level tasks, right? So we're going to talk about what that means for recent graduates, right? And you're going to go into the new skills that graduates need now to be able to create their own companies, right? To build and test their own products, and to be able to do that in a way where there's no financial overhead, there's no need to hire teams, right? And then we're gonna dovetail into something which is so dear to me and I know everyone listening, which is how do we create peace, right? You're Israeli, your family still lives there. And you have a really fresh perspective on being able to go about creating peace in the Mideast, to be able to have a sense of unity. And I think everyone here is going to find your insights really unique and thought-provoking. So thank you so much for joining. I'm so glad that you're back. And I probably should also say that you're my better half.
No, yeah, thank you. Happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, thank you so much for coming. So why don't we kick it off with this? So this was super fascinating. I know you and I were walking the other day, and you were starting to tell me how you were playing around with ChatGPT and you were using a functionality where you had just built out like an architect, kind of like a framework, right? That would be for a product use case, right? And you had the ability to understand where the issues were, where the bottlenecks were. You actually could run it, right? So that you
I've
could,
simulated. Yep.
yeah, like before deploying it, whether or
Right.
not we should roll up our sleeves and start building this kind of thing and test it ourselves. So that's kind of, the thing that made me say, wow, we are in the most exciting time. I know everyone is so super afraid about AI eliminating their role, especially with what I just said before. But in
Mhm.
actuality, you view it as the polar opposite.
Yeah, exactly. I think like the way we start realizing how to use AI is a kind of like your digital intern, your kind of like junior resources that you can rely on
Mm.
and start doing things for you much faster, and you really don't need, like the team around you to do big things. And you mentioned kind of like this idea of like how to plan an architecture, like software architecture, with ChatGPT without even actually building anything. So this thing is kind of like building a complex system. So in the past, you kind of had to build like a prototype. You have an idea and you're building a prototype. That takes like quite some time, and you need to invest money, and then you get to the point that you validate your prototype and see if it's working. So now, like you don't really need to build anything to validate your idea. You can actually build the architecture with ChatGPT, kind of explain what the architecture could be, and they kind of you working on the architecture together. And once you have the architecture, you can actually simulate what is it going to be. So in our case, was we're building kind of like an agent that collects information from the users and kind of ask follow-up questions, kind of a triage agent for doctors. And the only way to know if it's actually working is actually building it. But in my case, was able to simulate the conversation with ChatGPT and see if actually this architecture working. So it's really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it saves a whole lot of time. and a whole lot of resources and a
Right.
whole lot of pain. But I mean, it also sounds like it allows you to fail fast, which I think is one
Mhm.
of the things that we're probably missing within the corporate space, and why we're always trying to show up with like such a degree of perfectionism and having it all figured out, when in actuality, we need to be able to play this way.
Right. Yeah, that's what tools actually unlock is like the kind of like the not being like not having shame, asking questions and trying things and fail because nobody know about your failure. I think that's like the fear that we have all the time is like, oh, people are gonna think I'm silly or like not like smart in the meetings or like as we try to hide it, but with this technology, you can be as like you can ask same question, same subject anytime, and you really accelerate your work like that because
Right.
you're failing as you're doing it, but nobody actually knows that you're failing. So.
Right.
Um,
And what, like, so for this, is this something that other people know about, that everyone else is using, or do you just like figure this out on your own? Like, how did this all happen?
I'm sure someone using it like that, but like I think like with this technology, I think the most important thing is like experiment and kind of try to find your own use cases. There's no like even if there is, I'm sure there is a lot of books of like things that you can do and at the end of the day, like you will need to find your own use cases. I know you did some of it like in writing, like how to use kind of large language models to like write better and kind of like writing books and memoirs and things like that.
Yes.
I think everybody needs to figure it out. Like that's what I'm telling people, right? Like um, you need to kind of play with this tool like 1 hour a day. After like 30 days, you want to start like everything you're doing. The first thinking is like, can I do it with AI? And you're gonna be amazed by all these use cases that you will find.
Oh yeah. No, it's so liberating, and I think that that's the thing that people don't really realize. Like, you brought up the writing. So I've been writing my memoir now for a few months, and I mean, having to wait for someone to look at it, for someone to edit it, for someone, to validate that the flow is working, all of that is completely over when you figure out how to talk to AI. So now every time that I have an idea for a chapter, once I put that through ChatGPT, or actually I'm using Claude Sonnet, is unbelievable for writing. I can understand whether or not that's even something that would be interesting to anyone in the market. But outside of that, once I complete the chapter, I can now easily, like in a matter of seconds, have the whole thing edited, which is
Right.
insane, right? And walk away with like what I know my next chapter should be based upon how the other one ended, right? And I know a lot of writers have blocks in that way,
Mhm.
and that all only just comes about because I've given it the original idea that has come from me, and I've rolled my sleeves up to do the writing. But I'm not going to wait for someone else that I now need to pay to be able to say, okay, now you can take your next step in your book. And I think that this goes back to what you're talking about, because with the way that you're using ChatGPT to validate a product architecture, right? How does that translate into, I'm a recent graduate, my parents just spent a lot in school for me. I have like a ton of debt, unfortunately. The jobs are just disappearing every single day. What does that now mean? What do I do?
No, it's a good question. Like, I don't know if I have a real answer to it because I think we're all trying to figure out, especially like the people that are getting into college right now and they need to pick something and they need to do something and they're going to leave college in 4 years and the world will be completely different. But what I can see right now that, and we can feel it in the market, like as someone that hiring engineer and hiring team, like junior roles are the first one to get eliminated because like it's a big investment to have junior resources in your team. You need to train them. They don't really know a lot of things so it's a lot of training and mentorship, and usually it takes like a year to like kind of like get someone to really produce something for you. And I can see like, so I'm building products every day and I'm like, like actually like coding product, like doing like the software engineering action. I can't think of scenario that I will need a junior engineer.
Mm.
Like I would like my junior engineer right now, it's AI. kind of like my architect, my junior engineer to write the code, and we become like the thinker. And I think
Right.
like you mentioned like how people kind of like in the writing space, like they're afraid and they kind of like because they're afraid to lose the thing. But the thing is, like we're not outsourcing the thinking. The
Right.
thinking will stay like in the human
Right.
level, and we're actually thinking better with AI.
Right.
And the granular work of like the action of writing code or writing, literature, that's AI can do, but you kind of a co-pilot with AI of like how to
Right.
write it, kind of like not like guide the AI like how to do it. So it's still yours.
Right.
Uh, but
Right.
that's kind
Like
of
it's
what you used to be
basic.
like right. And that's kind of things like junior people used to do in the
Right.
workforce, right? Like you have an idea and you're like you have an intern or you have like a junior person to write the article for you, to write the code for you. But right now I don't need to, I can just like, the AI can actually do it and get feedback immediately, right?
Right.
And
Right.
iterate on.
It's the same thing with editing what I write, right? So now what that means is I could write like a few books a year,
Right.
as a writer. That's extremely empowering, as opposed to, sometimes a new writer, it takes you a few years to write a book.
Yeah.
So like what we're seeing is that this is an expansion of self. This is an expansion
Mhm.
of artistry. This is an expansion of tapping into that which you love to do, right?
Mhm.
And then coexisting with AI to be able to remove all the heavy lifting, all of the busy work so that you can do more of the creating, right? Do more of the innovating. And so when we look at like the junior roles that are getting eliminated, it's the minutia, it's someone building a deck, it's someone making someone an appointment, it's someone doing research, all of that gets done now. And it's not, I don't think it's that we're losing, our junior workforce. I think the opposite is that we are empowering our junior workforce to actually look inside themselves, right? And say, what is it that I really want to create? And we were talking earlier in the prep call that that's going to cause a great disruption in colleges and education in university because we don't teach that.
Mhm.
That's not what we teach.
How do you teach that, right? That's the
Yeah.
thing. Like the challenge is like I think the people that get the most from AI is like senior people that like have an experience and saw a lot of things and have had a lot of experience in their life. But how do you get experiences like from a college graduate without going through these things that we went through, right? And I think that's the thing that like I'm concerned about is like, hey, the school doesn't actually prepare you for like those
Right.
experience. But like I think when they're leaving, at least like the way it is today, when they leave college, they're not marketable. They like there's nothing, and they maybe they need to do their own thing and they need to be more entrepreneurs and kind of create their own thing. But this is a big shift, right? We kind of like program to this is what life should be, right? Like education, 12 years, go to college another 4 years, and then you have a job and you start as a junior, and then like you climb up the ladder. And all these, all this program is kind of like not applicable anymore. It's
No,
just like,
it's not. And I find it to be because of that the most fascinating time because I feel like this old program that we used to live in, kept us from doing that which we love the most.
yeah,
Kept us
right,
from doing that thing that we're passionate about because we were always told that that's not practical, right? And you need to instead choose something, that's going to garner you, what we'll call safety, which is really the most amount of money, and like from like an optics perspective, the kind of life that makes you look as though you have the identity of being successful. And then what do we see over and over again? So many people at our age are burnt out because they never did the thing that they love. So I feel
right,
like we're being forced to turn inward
right,
now and start asking ourselves if you were able to do that thing that you love because your role is getting eliminated, right? So for the first time ever, you would be able to, like, I could write, only because now I know that it's getting edited right away, it's being formatted right away. I'm going to learn how to get it published through AI.
right.
Now because of that, I could spot a hole in the market and create a product, without having all this overhead and all these people. I can actually do the thing that I've always wanted to do. And I think we have to start to teach our children at the inception to tap into what has always been inside of them at the very beginning as a child, at the child level, which is imagination.
Right. Yeah. And like, right, like we always, we've been told that like everything is a progression, like in life, right? You need to like, it's like that, like you have to be a junior and you need to climb up to really do meaningful things in life, right? And
Right.
that's when maybe you become like a director level and you start doing meaningful things in life, which is not true. Like right now, like I think like young college graduated, like they're coming with a different perspective that we don't have, right? About their life. They probably more aware of like what's actually working in life than we do, but they just needs to, I think this, whatever this education system, whatever system is, um, they need to kind of like have the like have those kids with confident level that they can do anything, right? Like they don't need permission to do things,
Right.
and but that's the shift, right? And I think school systems still like operate from kind of the ladder, right?
Right.
Like you need to like 4 years and PhD and then like 10 job. Like no, like you can like be entrepreneur when you're 18. And I know actually
Right.
some kids that like do an entrepreneurship like when they're 18,
Yeah.
and
What are
so
what are the steps for that? You're 18, you decide I want to forego college. I don't need to memorize facts. I can access all the facts that I'm interested in, on ChatGPT. I know how to stitch it together to create, like a product, you
right.
know. Now what do I do?
I think like we need to look around and see what problems we want to solve, like as
Mhm.
kids, right? And they see problems all the time, but they need to think about like instead of like being passive about like kind of go through life, you just like what problem do I want to solve? So
Right.
like and having the mind shift that like we I think many years like we kind of like we become like very passive about those things, right? Like we going to someone gonna give us a job, someone gonna like educate,
Right.
like it's like we always like the taker, like and someone needs to give it to us. And I think
Right.
now
Right.
we all just need to take. And so like to answer your question, like uh just start seeing problems that you're passionate about and start solving them, and start be curious about them, and using AI to do that, right? Like you can
Right.
just ask anything and learn any subject that you want. So if you're passionate about, like the environment, so start like understanding what's the environment, what's problem you want to solve.
And then you can use, if you know how to be able to speak to AI properly, you can use it to write code. I know we've spoken to that in the past, but I mean, it sounds like AI can wear so many hats. Like, where are the limitations?
Uh, well, yeah, obviously there are limitation, right? Like it's a predictive machine. It's not deterministic. It's like the answers that you're gonna get from AI, you need to validate those answers. So I think that's the limitation of AI. But beyond that, like when you have the right, you're prompting correctly and you kind of validate it and you're not like taking everything for granted, it's a very creative tool, right? Like yeah, like so um definitely there are limitations, but I think there's more like enablements and in this technology than limitation. I think the limitation a lot of the time is like us human.
Right. Right.
Um, because I've been playing with this technology for a few years already, and I still surprised by all the things that it can do.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's amazing how the more you work with it, the more it can give back to you. And I think that that's where we need to start moving past our fear, right? And start allowing ourselves to play, right? That is the thing that's like been drummed out of us as kids. Shut down your imagination, shut down your playfulness, your ability to be okay with failing fast. And this is like essentially like a tool for all of that, and then ask yourself, like, if you could create anything, what would it be? And you could even work with ChatGPT or any AI, if you don't know what that is, you can actually work with AI on how to figure that out for yourself.
Right. There's nothing that you cannot do. There's nothing that you cannot learn and do, and domain that you have no idea what they are. Like if you're not an engineer or a technical person and you don't have this blockage of like, oh my God, that's a scary field, you can do it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of tools that you can write the code and again, if the problems that you're finding, you're passionate about the problem, you're always going to find a way to kind of
Yeah.
go deeper on that problem and find the tools that help you figure it out, the solution. So yeah, I think that's what junior people, like college graduate, needs to do is like start like, and that's what they don't teach you in school, right? That they like, it's still like memorization and kind of like certificates and like tests and things like that. Like I want to see school like more of like fluid
Mhm.
and kind of like more of like entrepreneurship school, or
Yeah.
like bring our own problem and try to solve it. And you have like a moderator in the class. That's what it is. It's not even a teacher.
Yeah. I love
It
that.
doesn't need to know. He doesn't need to know anything about the subject of the kids trying to solve. They're just trying to guide them, like
Right.
where to find the answer and like challenge them and things like that. So it's a different kind of role, right?
Right.
I think that's probably what we all need to do, but we still we're still in the limbo state right now. Like we still kind of like human is like half in, half out on this
Right.
AI thing. I think in 10 years, probably it's going to be like very natural. We're not even going to think about it. But yeah, it's very kind of natural that, like when you go through this big transformation, that you're gonna be very confused in the moment of the transformation.
So your thought, your feeling is that everyone should be able to have a role if they know how to work with AI. Everyone should be able to generate abundance in some way if they're open and curious and they also know what it is that they want to create.
Yeah, like if I'm thinking about like the future of abundance even, and we can go into this kind of, I feel like we're moving into maybe like a free economy a little bit because Um, if you have AI is producing anything that you want and there's no overhead, the only overhead is like the CPUs, the GPUs, but delivery is not a thing, like delivering stuff to your house. Growing thing is not a cost, really a major cost because there's no many hands. So a lot of things gonna be a lot cheaper
Right,
than today.
right.
So do we need to make a job like six figures in the future? Maybe not. Maybe we need a lot less.
Yeah. That's the
Right?
shift. Like I feel like that's the shift we're going towards because we've
Mhm.
always said yes to roles when we really meant no, and we did
Mhm.
it just for the money to be able to, pay for this kind of life. And now when we start to see that those roles are going away and things might start to get less expensive, which is
Mhm.
wonderful, but there's kind of like this meeting in the middle of doing what you love and because of that you're needing less things because you're like I'm just in the flow state. Like I'm creating just for the sake of joy and because of that things do start to flow to you because you're kind of
Mhm.
like in that high vibrational way of creating. Talk to me about what it's like to live that kind of a balance because I feel like this is probably the sticking point for most people going forward, being afraid of like letting go that old way of being of grinding for the money versus living in like a state of joy and flow and needing less because of that because you are more as a person now.
Yeah. I think people's not gonna have a choice. I think like
Right. First
that's
off.
it's not like a choice, like how do you make a transition? Yeah, some people, that early gonna make this transition because they see kind of the future, that that's what's
Yeah.
gonna happen. But majority of the people gonna like, just like don't not gonna have any choice by doing it because jobs going to be very limited. Corporation is going to be very small, right? Like you don't need like organization of like Google 50, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of employees.
Right.
You don't have those amount of jobs anymore. So you're gonna have to live with a lot less and then do the things that you love if you want to make a little extra. Now, if you kind of listening to Elon Musk and like how he's kind of predicting the future about the global economy, that's could happen, right? Like could happen that everything's so cheap that you start getting like the basic need meet, right? You're gonna have your home. Obviously, it's not gonna have luxury home. It's gonna be like different kind of home, maybe community. You're gonna have your food. You're gonna have everything, and that's gonna be like a kind of global economy, like free. But if you want to do something, if you want more than that, you're gonna have to figure it out, right? And just like back in the day, like, a lot of, I think like back in the day, we had a lot more entrepreneurship. I'm talking
Mhm.
about like before the Industrial Revolution, people were farming, that was their own farm. So it was like they needed to do these things to make more abundance, right?
Right.
I think maybe we're going back a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like less about corporation, people not going to provide you, like corporation not going to provide you. You will need to figure it out on your own if you want this extra thing, right?
Right. Right. And I feel like a lot of people, when we think about starting to live in community or like growing our own food,
Mhm.
kind of like slowing down, being more with our families, that could cause us to just say, wow, that really is enough. And if I have an artistry inside of me that I want to pull out that I've never been able to do before, just being able to do that gives me the sense of wholeness that I think I never had when I had like the big fancy house and the six figures. And I think that's why the shift is happening because we've got so far away from that way of living. Um, and so for you, how do you personally navigate that shift into living in a place of wholeness versus feeling like maybe you need more?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of you have to kind of like have like for me it was like mind shift of like those things never made me happy. Like I went through the corporate ladder and like chased the next promotion and it's actually did the opposite for me, right? Like every promotion, everything, I was like become more kind of stressed and more not happy,
I know, and
right?
I saw it. I lived
Yeah,
with you at that time. And
yeah, like show me like, they have like cases of people that climbing the ladder and like they're happy, maybe. But I think most of them they're not,
yeah,
and they kind of chasing it because the ego and they're chasing it because the titles and things like that. But I had the realization that like I was never like ego-driven person. So I'm like every promotion, every money that I make extra, it's yeah, I bought more things, but that's not actually what makes me happy. So I think once I realized that things not makes me happy, I start to eliminate things in my life,
mm,
and changing the way I'm dreaming about things, right?
right,
So in the past I was dreaming about bigger home and fancy cars. Now I'm actually dreaming about small home and electric cars and solar and like growing your own thing. That's my new dreams because I
right,
know that's going to give me happiness. Like if I'm not relying on chasing abundance, and I'm only doing things that I love, the only way to do it is by really kind of downsizing your life and like make it a lot more simple.
right. Yeah, and I know that's what we're doing.
So we're
Um,
doing.
and I think like our biggest fear around that was like, well, what would the kids think? Like are they going to be okay? Because we've been raising them in like a consumeristic world forever. We're here in Staten Island. It's like it's the hub of consumerism.
Consumers.
Yeah, and when we first told them, we want to sell our house, we want to move to a place where, we're slowing down and we have our own land, but we'll have like sweeping views and maybe we'll be in front of a lake and we'll grow our own things and become self-sustaining. And, we thought like this was going to break them or something. We thought it would break my parents, like this would like ruin them because we had always built like this like identity of the
Yeah.
opposite and no one like really cared.
Yeah.
They were
Well,
like, okay.
if you think like all the successful people that climb the ladder and everything, are the kids happier? Like, I think the kids probably have more problems, right? Because the parents not around and there's no one actually I don't think the kids care about it, right? Like,
No, but like we stayed for them for this long, like which is kind of like the most because we wanted to do this forever, but we're always like, oh, we'll wait till, they're this age. We'll wait till they finally whatever. And we were like, you know what? Let's just do it now because, our sense is because this shift is happening. We feel like why wait to sell our place when everyone has to?
right,
you know, why not sell it before, and be able to actually still make money from our home.
right.
And doing that was the most liberating thing that I've ever done.
Yeah, I think like one thing that like important to people to understand is the shift is going to be very fast.
Yeah.
And a lot of people is just like, oh, we have time, like, like it's gonna take time to, it's not, it's going to be like super fast. And when I'm saying fast, 3, 5 years,
Yeah.
definitely by then, like definitely 2031, 2032, it's gonna be a different world here.
Oh yeah.
And all the
Absolutely.
things that we just spoke about here, jobs, cooperation, I think it's going to happen. They say like by the end, in 6 months, all the software in the world. Now, there's a lot of like kind of slogan and things like that, but like I believe it, like in 6 months, 90% of the software going to be written by agents,
Right.
you know.
And this is
But
the whole thing that like this
right.
is why like we need to have these conversations now because rather than living in a place of fear and waiting for like the other shoe to drop and feeling like a victim and like there's nothing you can do about it, we need to start having conversations around, well, what do we do?
Right.
And how can we actually make this the most exciting time? Because we actually all chose to be here now. Our souls were like, we want to come right now. We want to be a part of
Mhm.
this shift. We want to help usher in the shift. And that's where, kind of like turning the conversation towards, the constant war that's been going on for centuries now and always ever yielding the same kind of an outcome. It doesn't make sense anymore because as we're shifting into a new way of being, that also needs to shift into a new way of being. So we might as well cover off on all of it, right? And what is your sense on that? Because I know you were starting to tell me the other day, after we saw like a completely transformative movie, which I recommend everyone seeing, How to Train Your Dragon. Definitely has the secret sauce for how to create peace in the Middle East. And you said some profound things after that.
Well, I think like speaking about all the conflicts that like we are in the entire world, specifically Israel, and like
Yeah,
it's obviously it's like all kind of coming from misinformation and coming from like understanding that we are just pieces in the puzzle, like in the chess game,
yeah,
that someone wants to keep us the way like hating each other
yeah,
because it's promote their own agenda, and it's kind of like when I'm looking, kind of go to social medias and kind of see like the division, um, like I think most of the people just don't like thinking this way that it's actually nobody's right.
right,
Nobody's right. Like they were just fueled with information to hate each other.
right,
And it's our responsibility to do the research. And I think that's the thing that we all need to do. Um, it's really do the research about what's happening right now in the world and what at the end of the day, what you care about,
right, right.
and
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, what you're saying is really powerful, and I totally agree, and wish everyone can understand that there is no side but the
mhm,
human side
yeah,
because we're all human, right? And we all have come from the same place and we're going back to the same place. And what you said before, it's so important to take a step back and ask yourself why you're saying yes to a leader who tells you to murder. Why would we do that?
yeah,
Right? Like as we're moving into unity and we're moving into community and a collective way of being and joy and living our truth and doing what we love, if we all took a step back every single one of us, and
Right.
asked ourselves, what really do we truly want? Because have we ever gotten a result that has given us the sense of joy that already lives inside of us, by the way, from murdering,
But
from stepping onto a certain piece of land and occupying it? You said it before, Bess, that joy never comes from the outside. It's only
mhm.
ever from the inside. And so you've got these leaders at the top who are just using us all as pawns that really benefit when our heads are down and we're distracted, and they get to do whatever they want, behind the curtain, and live super comfortably. Like
Yeah.
we're being used like cows or batteries. Like it's so ridiculous when instead of like choosing a side and getting other people to agree with you, we could be using that energy for figuring out who we are and what we want to make together.
Yeah. Like, yeah, you mentioned the movie, like the dragon movie, right?
Yeah.
Like, so in the movie, like how they hate the dragon and like against the dragon
Yeah.
because all the generation told them that you need to fight the dragon, right? Until they realize, like one of the character in the movie, like let's just try to be friendly with them. Let's just like talk to them and see what
Yeah.
they're actually a nice creature. That at the end of the movie they kind of. But that's exactly right. Like I think like we are trained to hate each other. We're raised to hate each other. We see it everywhere. We see it like in the U.S. in university. Like the hate is unbelievable. It's
Yeah.
upsetting me so much. And I think at the end of the day, like, we all want like the same thing and like fighting and for things, right? Fighting for
Yeah.
things, what, for a piece of
Yeah.
land, for like
Yeah.
what, for pride. That's not what's going to make us happy.
Like God is not in that land. God is in you,
Right, right,
and we can't fight for God. It doesn't,
right.
because we already are God. We're part of God. We're part of the universe. With the movie, I found it fascinating, like the like kind of like the head dragon that they were like
Hmm.
all like that was driving the fighting. You
Right.
know, they didn't even know that they could even take down that dragon, that they could question that dragon. They just like would constantly do what the dragon told them to do because that was their normal way of being. The shift is only going to come like on the individual basis because we are so much stronger. All of us, if
Right.
every individual says no to the leaders that tell us to murder, then we are the ones that are in charge. And that little top 1% starts to disappear and be disempowered. And that's the shift that we need to make.
Yeah. If you see, like, if you're following the Iran story, right?
Yeah.
Like, the population in Iran, they don't want the regime.
Right. They
You
don't
know,
even want the regime.
they don't want the regime. They actually,
Exactly.
most of them siding with Israel to kind of like release them from this regime, right? But again, like I think that they need to have courage to do something. It's very dangerous to kind of like now like do something because the consequences is like, oh, we're just gonna hang you in the street. Um, but yeah, like I think that we all needs to rise up.
We
We all.
all, Israel, like Israeli soldiers, American soldiers, all soldiers and all people in all countries have to stop saying yes to murder because
Mhm.
that is against humanity. When
Yeah,
we start to say yes to unity, all of a sudden we're like, damn, we have enough. We have enough land. We have enough food. We have enough water. We're just told that we don't have enough so that we can be pitted against each other and be heads down like those dragons, fighting for what we don't even understand,
yeah.
fighting for
Hey.
them to be able to be comfortable. And this is where I get really riled up about it because it's such a waste of energy when we could be coming together, right? Folks could be like coming on this podcast talking about ways in which to create new systems to serve humanity. And that's what they don't want us doing. They don't want us knowing our power. So
Yeah.
with that, we can kind of close it out with you giving me your vision of what you believe the new Earth should look like.
Oh wow.
That's a big one. It's a big question.
The new earth. I think we talked about it a little bit about
Yeah.
like needing less um you're in control of your own destiny. You can create anything. You can solve any problems with AI.
Right, with AI.
With AI, or just believe that you can solve those problems. And yeah, it's a lot of that. A lot of like less things. Breaking a lot of the program that we raised on. Like the hate, and also we talked about education. And in many areas, many other areas, that everything needs to change and reshift to something else, rethink everything, health systems, like our like military, government, like everything needs to rethink, and it needs to be powered by the people.
Yes. Awesome. Well said. Thank you so much for joining me yet again. And
Yeah.
it was great seeing you, and I'll see you in 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Bye.
That was fun. Thank you.